Virtual reality on the HTC Vive is incredible. It might be expensive, a pain in the ass to set up, and it's not perfect, but it's the best gaming experience I've ever had. So if you're interested in buying one of these, or you're just curious about how it all works, here are my top 10 tips for setting up and using the HTC Vive. Number 1, make sure you have enough space. The minimum requirement is 2 by 1.5 meters, but that's the bare minimum. And some games will warn you that you don't have enough space, even if you do meet that minimum requirement. I'm quite lucky here in my parents' living room that I have about 3.2 by 2.2 meters of space, which I found is more than enough and is an ample holodeck. But if you are just at the minimum, you may find you don't get the best experience out of the Vive. So do consider how much space you have before you go out and buy one. Secondly, have a plan for where you're going to mount the laser lighthouses. When you set up the Vive for the first time, the part that takes the longest is figuring out where you're going to put the two sensors. They need to be positioned diagonally opposite each other, ideally around 2 meters high, angled 35 degrees down, and no more than 5 meters apart. So whether you drill into the walls, you use the bundled sticky base, or you put it on a piece of furniture, or even like me, improvise with what was a green screen tripod stand and a bit of plastic with a hole drilled through to hold it, it's really up to you. I will put a link in the description though for these tripods. I'm not sure if you can see them on camera right now, as they're actually a pretty good idea because you can fold them down and store them away if you're not using them all the time, but at the same time when they are up you can position them exactly where you want to get the best experience. Number 3, when you first unbox the Vive, you will see a billion things in the box, but don't let that scare you. It actually took me about 45 minutes to set up for the first time, including getting the software up and running and tracking out the space I had. So it can be a little daunting at first, but don't worry, it really isn't that hard. As I say, what takes the longest is just figuring out where you're going to put the laser lighthouses. So if you have an idea for what you're going to do there, it doesn't take that long at all. Now, number 4, make sure you download the Vive software and any Steam games you want to play before you set up the Vive for the first time. This way, once you get it up and running, you can get straight into the action and there's no waiting around for pesky downloads. Number 5, make sure everything is updated. When you open Steam VR, you'll see there's a little icon at the bottom of Steam which shows the 2 sensors, the 2 controllers, and the headset. Right click on each one of those to make sure they're all updated, because new software, new patches come out all the time. Even though the Vive is a lot more stable than it was when it came out, there are still a few bugs here and there. And also make sure your graphics drivers are up to date too. Number 6, I would recommend playing The Lab first. It's a fun little game from Valve. There's loads of little mini games inside it, and it's a great way to get used to using the VR headset for the first time. Number 7, if you're considering buying a HTC Vive but you're worried about motion sickness or nausea, don't worry. I found the Samsung Gear VR headset made me feel quite sick after using it for about 15 minutes, but the Vive is a lot better. My longest session in it so far is around 2 hours, and I came out without any motion sickness whatsoever. It's really down to the fact that you're physically moving your body around the room as well. You're not sitting stationary with a character moving in-game. This might not be the case for every game. Perhaps if you're sort of detached from the first-person mode, if you're playing a third-person game, you may feel it more so, but your brain just isn't as confused as it is on the cheaper VR headsets like the Gear VR. So, as someone who does get motion sick, as does my brother who's used this, we found the Vive to be surprisingly good at not making you feel sick, so don't worry about that too much. Number 8 is another concern a lot of people have, which is the cable tether coming out from the back of the headset all the way down back to your computer. I'd say within about 5 minutes you develop a sixth sense for where it's going to be. I never tripped over it once. You can sort of usually feel it over your shoulder or sort of on the back of your leg sometimes, so you know roughly where it is and you can just sort of step over it or twist yourself around so you don't get all tangled up. Number 9, I definitely recommend washing the foam faceband around the mask every now and then, because you can get quite hot when you're using the Vive, and sometimes a bit sweaty depending on the game you're playing. And if there's a whole bunch of people using it, if you've got some mates around using it, can get a bit gross quite quick. So the foam sort of protector is machine washable, so do chuck it in the wash every now and then so you don't have your headset smelling of horrible nastiness. And finally, number 10, don't forget the Vive has a built-in mic. I was playing Pool Nation, which is one of the VR games on the Steam store, and I got into a multiplayer game, and this guy, this other headset appeared in my game. That's how it's represented as another character, and I could hear him, and I said, "He can't hear me, can I?" And then out of my speakers, I heard, "Yeah, I can hear you." So don't forget that the HTC Vive has a mic built in. You can mute it in the settings if you don't want your hilarious comments to go through, but it's actually quite a cool experience. You can not only be in the game with someone in an immersive bar experience like Pool Nation, and I had a good chat with this guy as I played some pool and I lost, unfortunately. That's pretty cool if you want to do some Skype sessions or if you want to play some multiplayer games, but you can always mute it if you want to keep to yourself. So I hope you found these top 10 tips and tricks for setting up and using the HTC Vive useful. Let me know what you think of the Vive and whether you'd buy one in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe because there'll be loads more VR content coming very soon, including my full review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again right here on the Tech Chat.